Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Home Games, the 11.5 billionth. It's back with Mark after some time with Steve. I'm sorry you've got the reserve team today, but making up for it, we've got an amazing show for you this week with an East Coast, West Coast smackdown. That's the East Coast and West Coast of Scotland, of course, one of which is the natural seat of power and government, and soap, and the other one is Glasgow. So going to be a lot of this kind of nonsense this week, I think. But I'm delighted and honoured to be joined by Mr. Adrian Murphy of Murphy Wealth in Glasgow. Adrian, say hello to all the boys and girls.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to know that I was 11th billionth on the list of guests, though. There's nothing like feeling special.
Yeah, and that is nothing like feeling special. You're quite right. Actually, it's the start of a run of, I think we've got 4 in a row that are planners, which I'm really pleased about, because we had a mix of loads of different folk on and a really good session last week with Rosanna on coaching and all that. But I think my favourite ones are the ones where we get inside the planning businesses and all that stuff. So we've got loads to talk about with Adrian, and those of you that know Adrian, some of you will know that we probably won't have any time, any hassle filling our time today. And there's some unfinished business between Roland and Adrian. They've got to insult each other for a while as well, so that'll be quite good fun. So if I can get a word in, I'll ask some questions and all that kind of stuff. And but do ask questions as well. Adrian's got a fascinating business, and the kind of backstory behind it is really interesting too. So we're going to start with all that. Before we do, we've got all the usual housekeeping to do. I'll pop our little traditional link in there for any of you that are having sound problems. I can't tell you the problems we had yesterday, all of which were at my end, not Adrian's end. So we're on a knife edge here. So hopefully we won't have sound issues. It was like the David Ferguson saga all over again, except different. And we don't want any part of that. No. Home Games, for any of you that aren't with us before, we're not trying to solve the world here. We just want to have a diverting 45 minutes while you have your lunch. And it was born out of us not being able to do our in-person event in Scotland, which we call the Home Game. And Adrian actually was one of our guests on the Home Game last year, the first one that we did, and was surprisingly good, I've got to say. Exceeded expectations. But, not like Joe Biden, you set expectations really low, and then he can't help but be there. But he was brilliant there, and I want to pick up on some of the topics we talked about there as well. There's nothing commercial about Home Games. There's no sponsors. There's no anything. It's just us having a chat to interesting people. So I hope you enjoy it. There is one thing I would ask of you, if you would be nice enough to do it. There's a green button at the bottom of your screen, and that takes you to a big survey. As many of you will know, the Lancat's a research business in part, and once a year we do a really, really big census of the advisory profession. Last year, 404 firms responded, which was awesome. This year we want to smash that, and we're already doing really well. We're going to close it on Friday. I currently need 32 more firms to get me to a really, really pleasing round number. Now, Steve's not here, but Steve really likes round numbers, and it would be lovely if we could make him just a little bit happier than his usual sad self. If you haven't spent the time to fill out the survey and you work for an advice business, if you work for a provider or something, we don't want to hear from you. It's just people in advice businesses or paraplanning businesses. Please, would you be nice enough to help us out? Adrian's done it, and he said it was fine.
It was remarkably painless, actually. So yeah, easy done, and actually really, really interested in the output from that.
Yeah, and Rich, that's great. Like, vote early, vote often, mate. You can fill it out as many times as you like. No, don't actually do that. Don't actually do that. So that's very much appreciated. T-shirt of the week this week is an American one, actually, in honor of the American election process, from Connecticut, for Fires in the Distance. A kind of mixture of kind of melodic death metal and black metal. There's some kind of fast barky stuff and some stuff that's really not, and moments in there where you'd think that someone like I don't know, Olafur Arnolds or Nils Fram had popped in and played synthesizer for very slightly odd, but really really worth it. But you can only get their stuff from Bandcamp, and if you do, and you should, don't do what I did and order the t-shirt and the CD pack, because it comes from America. They don't pay the customs charge, and a CD and a t-shirt, so that I've got a different t-shirt to wear for home games, cost me something like £50 because I didn't look, and I'm an idiot. So don't be like Mark. Order your t-shirts from EU suppliers for now, and then we'll see what happens. I've got one more kind of fresh t-shirt to wear, and then I'm going to have to stop this having a different t-shirt each week, because I've just got this mountain of band t-shirts. I'm having to look for what's on sale so I can buy more.
Never to be worn again either.
The one that's left to wear, I'll be honest, the front print is okay, the back print is just unacceptable. Right. And I didn't know it had that on it when I bought it, and I kind of opened it and my wife went, no way. Like, you know, you say your mum wouldn't wash it or so. Yeah. She's like, you're not hanging that out in the line outside. Absolutely not. Not that she my mum. You understand that. Right. Enough of all that. Hi, Sean. Let's get going, mate. So we were trying to remember yesterday when I first made your acquaintance, which must have been 12 or 13 years ago. Yeah. And we're remembering back, that was probably Standard Life days, I think. And I'm pretty sure the first 3 or 4 times I met you, we weren't sober.
Wouldn't have thought so. No, that's why it's a bit hazy as to the exact timeline.
Yeah.
I think we could say that's back when Standard Life were kind of all right as well.
Oh, I say, madam. Oh, we're going for it right from the get-go. Obviously, the opinions of the guests aren't necessarily the opinions of the management, you understand. So it's all it's all good. Rocky versus Ivan Drago, says Lee. This would be like the worst boxing match ever.
It really would.
Least impactful boxing match you've ever seen. So back then, though, am I right in saying you were still working with kind of Murphy, the original Murphy business back then? Is that right?
Back then, I mean, when for anyone who doesn't know, the firm was started, we're now beginning to say almost 50 years ago, because it sounds better than 43. And so, you know, my father, Brian, started it in the county town of Ayr, just down the west coast from where we are now. As it was an insurance broker. Back then there was no regulation, so you did insurance, you did an exam, and you did some endowments and etc. And on it went, and you know, that's what it was. It was a nice wee business, and it paid for all 300 of my siblings to go to university, etc. So, but you know, there was a period where there was no television in the house. Yeah, I think that's how that happened. So when I joined the firm after university, after studying investment and risk, it was, you know, we had an insurance business that was very profitable, and then we had a kind of financial services business that was tagged on the side of that, because you kind of, we did it, Dad did more of it. We had a couple of advisors that didn't really do much at all, as we were discussing yesterday, but we had, I don't know why we had them, I questioned that from the moment I walked in the door, but so it was like, right, okay, there's, you know, this is what I'm going to do, and Dad and I were very clear that eventually, you know, we would get rid of that, sell off the insurance business, because insurance is, as you know, it's very commoditized now, and it's, you know, every year every client is up for grabs, give or take. It's a pretty thankless task, and claims, and oh dear. So I was never interested in doing that. So we kind of focused on that. Eventually moved on that business, and then, you know, with what was a very small practice at the time, made the colossally stupid decision to move the business from Ayr to Glasgow. I'd never moved from living in Glasgow, so I was, in my head, it was always, we were going to move the firm, because I saw that's where the most opportunity was, that's where the talent was, etc. And we did that back in 2014. So we had to kind of start again. We reskinned the firm. We didn't Phoenix it or anything like that. We very much just went, right, rebrand. We got rid of a lot of the old clients that we had from Air. We actually got rid of over a very reasonably short period of time the entire team that we had as it was back then, and it started again, and that was quite hard. But 7 years on now, it was a good decision.
Yeah. And I mean, it's it can't have been how Brian would have imagined it would turn out, right?
No. I mean, there's a nice wee story, which is not that these things matter, but there's a symbolism. When we moved to our new offices 2 years ago, in the midst of all the Brexit stuff going on, we make these decisions at the best times. We really do. And Dad came in. It was just over 2 years, just under 2 years ago. So it was just before Christmas, and Dad came in and was visibly emotional, because he just never, in his wildest dreams, he never thought that our wee backstreet financial advisor, insurance broker business would ever be in a place like that. Not that matters. It's what it represents, isn't it? And that was quite a nice wee moment for us. It's been, the last couple of years has been really amazing and really challenging. But again, you can see how you can still make huge steps forward, even when it's slightly. We could, to be honest, we could have stayed where we were, not built up. The team's 3 times the size it was. We would have done very well. We're very, very profitable, and I could have sat there and just said, "This is great. Let's just do this." But that's not. I think there's something bigger that we can do here in the profession. So we took those decisions.
So we'll talk about that more in a second. But I'm really interested in this idea of how firms move kind of between generations, and usually you see the DNA kind of coming down, right? It's the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. Yeah. Would life have been easier if you just set up completely fresh and not had that kind of sense of history in there?
It's hard to say, because there is no question in my mind, and myself and our new chairman were talking about this, that it is harder and takes longer to turn something turn around, change, etc., than it would be just to go blank sheet of paper and off we go. We can build the business that we want from day one, right? Yeah. But on the flip side, you have reputation, you have an income stream, even if it's not sufficient. You've still got an income stream, which is better than nothing. And I think the longevity, the legacy, and all these things matter too. So there's 2 sides to that, but no question, having a blank sheet of paper and mapping out the kind of functional structure of the business and how that would all operate would be much easier. It's like, we talk about product providers with legacy systems and stuff. It's the same kind of argument there, and we have a long tail, and in 43 years, as it is 43 and a half years now, we've never had a complaint upheld against us, touch wood. We've never had a PI claim. These are things that you kind of think, well, maybe we should have just started again or something like that, but that wouldn't have been right. And it's just a reflection of the fact we've probably done a pretty good job over the years. Not that it doesn't occasionally creep into my mind,
Yeah, I'll bet it does. And it seems to me, I mean, I've known you for a while, and from before this move happened, and I can't think of a better example of the kind of pre-professionalization, not that Brian wasn't professional, but you know what I mean, firms as they were, and then how you would make a new model kind of planning firm look now. So were you kind of conscious, you've said you wanted to set it up the way you want to set it up, but were you kind of rejectionist? Were you saying, listen, that's broken, we want to build something different here? Did you have a kind of, is it a religious thing for you,
I had if you go right back, and I can't remember the chaps' names who originally did the kind of new model roadshows and stuff like that. I cannot for the life of me remember the guy's name. And that was a real kind of like, because I always, and the reason I know you, I was conscious of having not worked in the profession or in industry, which typically a lot of the guys and girls will have been, consultants and various other things for life offices and whatnot. And I was very conscious of not having had that experience. So I made a point of going out into the market and meeting people like you and other good people as well. And just trying to understand a bit about where have we been, where we're going, and I remember being at one of the roadshow. It was called New Model. I don't know whether it was the inception of New Model, the magazine, or whether it was a separate thing. I can't actually recall. And I was thinking, yeah, that's the way. So I pre-RDR, I think 2 years before, at least 2 years before RDR, I know this isn't kind of groundbreaking or anything, but for an old-fashioned firm, it probably was. I said to all the guys, right, see all this kind of funded commission and bits and pieces that you get these days. We're not doing that anymore. Clients have to understand that they're paying for a quality service. It wasn't Brett Rowland. It was some other guy. David comes to mind, but it doesn't matter. I think the point about the blank sheet of paper versus the turnaround is that you wouldn't face a resistance.
Yeah,
I did, because I had advisors who were vastly more experienced than I was, much older than I was, and I'm standing there, just still in my short trousers, telling them, no, you can't do the things you've been doing for the last 20 years or whatever it's been.
I think you told me yesterday that these guys were only just covering their salary anyway. So it's not like they were...
Yeah, it wasn't even salary plus cost. It was just they covered their salary. Why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. So yeah, we don't do that anymore.
So usually inside all the guys that have really embraced the planning stuff, there's one bit of it that really resonated with them, the kind of come to God moment kind of thing, where we say, right, we're not just going to run a kind of post RDR firm, we're really going to embrace a planning centric kind of proposition. And we've had a lot of Glaswegian advisors on them. We've had Lisa and we had Jenny and those guys, and each of those has got one. There's something that pinged them. Did you have one of those moments?
It's hard to, I'm not sure. I think when trying to go back to, I'd hired a kind of coach a while back now to work with me, and it was it wasn't a kind of Brett Davidson, although Brett would have been ideal. I think there's somebody else saying David Sheldon might have been that. I can't remember, but there was no real eureka moment. And if I'm honest, the real eureka moment, and this might come as a surprise, has been in the last year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We were doing, I would say, a very good job as financial planners. We do. We've got lots of happy clients. We get lots of referrals. The business is growing exponentially. So we're doing something right, and we don't charge 5% initial fees and all that kind of carry on. So it's built on a sustainable model. Let's call it that.
So you're missing a trick, mate.
I know. Sometimes I do wonder. Actually, we get more pillars in my lounge or something.
I don't think you could have more pillars. I don't think you could. I think you're pretty full of pillars there.
So
there's some frescoes or something.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I think the ceiling done. So we built that on a sustainable model of financial planning, and with this whole idea of making it simple for people and getting rid of all the kind of the really boring elements and the reports, and doing nice, colourful, interesting presentations as far as we were concerned. However, in the last 12 months, the work I've been doing with both the Kinder Institute and with BIQ, Neil Page, has completely just turned things on its head, and realised that what we do currently, or what we have been doing, is great. Of course it is, but actually there's something better.
And where does that take you to? I'm fascinated by this. So what is it that they sort of unlocked? And which came first, actually? Was it Beiji or the Kinder stuff?
I think it was actually. It was probably pretty simultaneous, actually. They were round about the same. No, in fact, it wasn't. That's not true. It was definitely Neil first. I was aware of the Kinder Institute, and I've seen Catherine Morgan speak. I really like her,
Yeah.
And various other people. And you know, that way you're kind of busy and you're doing what you're doing. In the back of your mind, you're going, yeah, there's definitely something better. And eventually, I bit the bullet and decide, right, Kinder's the kind of gold standard. Let's do that and see.
That's the Evoke course, is it?
Evoke, yeah, that's right. 7 stages of money maturity, Evoke, and beyond. So that's been just incredible. And I think and alongside, interestingly, what Neil does, that whole really tapping into the emotional and behavioural side of clients' financial lives is just so much more rewarding than what we do and what we continue to do. You know, the goals-based financial planning is great. However, there was definitely a wee bit of magic missing for me, and that seems to be it. We've got the team going through that. We've got we've got a rebrand that's about to launch, and a whole new value proposition, which is based around these themes. And you know, you extrapolate that out into the kind of evidence-based investing stuff, though, and as a package, that's quite. I think it's quite special. And as the kind of lead on that, I will test stuff before we roll it out across the firm. So I've been doing this for 6-7 months now with clients, prospects, and it's just been incredibly rewarding and impactful. So it really has been a real, you know, if you take the start of the pandemic to now, that journey, as much as it's been really difficult and tragic in a lot of circumstances for people, for us on our business journey, it's been transformational.
That's really interesting. The Business of Advice, David Shelton, Gary says that'll be it.
Might be it, yeah.
So I mean, it is interesting. So there are lots of evangelists for guys like Kinder, and Kinder obviously being one of the biggest ones, but there is a pushback against it as well, which says this isn't California, mate. You know, it's a bit huggy and a bit soft, and for a Ouija. Do you know what I mean? It's I used to tell jokes like
it's a headlock we get them in.
That's right. I used to tell jokes when we're be talking about this stuff. So it's all brilliant, but see, try doing it. In Glasgow, you get a punch in the face if you start asking questions like that. But that isn't your experience,
not at all.
Even in a relatively kind of a straight talking sort of environment, maybe like like you might encounter in the East End of Glasgow.
I have clients who you would exactly put in that camp. Maybe 50 odd years old, West Coast, hard nosed CEOs, whatever. 30 industries, whatever it might be, and it's about how you do it. Don't tell them, I think, is the point. You're not telling people that we're going to do all this tree huggy emotional stuff. What I'm going to do is just ask you really deep questions, and what you find is that people start to open up because people want to talk about what's important to them. In reality, people don't want to talk about money, or at least the function that we have in all of that. Investments and stuff are not. They're as we all know, they're the tools at our disposal to help them get to where they want to be. And actually, I've found I've been nervous. I'm not going to lie about introducing some of that into the conversation. But what we've done with how we're going to communicate that is that we'll be using these techniques within a slightly different framework, which we've developed, which is less, not threatening, but less, like you say, maybe you go, no, that's not what I was after. That's totally not what I was wanting. So again, it's how you package up, how you position it, and then how you deliver it. If you go straight in saying, I'm going to do some life coaching with you, that's probably not going to fly.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. And have you found? Are any clients pushing back at this? Because I imagine you still get that thing where someone says, I need my pension sorting out, Adrian, can you help me out? And then you pivot them off into a different kind of relationship. And I know you're repositioning the business. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But for now, I imagine there's traditional IFA business walking through the door. So how does it go down?
We haven't had any issue yet. Only one client who wasn't him and his partner. They just weren't ready to address some of these issues. Other than that, it hasn't been an issue. You know, you say that's great, and you know, part of it is saying, you know, is there anything urgent? And inevitably you get to something that is really important to them. Right, well, let's address that then. Let's not ignore the fact that there's something bothering you. You've not come to me about pension, really. You come to me about what that means and how that's going to get you to where you want to go. So it's we haven't had any great pushback at all. And again, I think if you just went straight in and were really blunt and just said, I'm going to do all this emotional shit, well, I just swear, with you, then...
I don't know. Are you?
My wife's not here, so yes.
Okay.
So again, and also as we, you know, again, we all know it's okay. I get it. Why are we doing this? So if you're able to explain that as to why it's going to benefit them, then yeah, it's not an issue at all. People aren't. Everybody, as much as we joke about the West Coast, and you could draw that equivalency around the UK. We're all emotional. There isn't a human out there other than Donald Trump. Even
not if you're from Edinburgh. Nope. No. No, we've pushed it all so deep down, so far down that we've got nothing left.
So that, other than folk from Edinburgh, you know, we're all emotional beings, and ultimately it's just about if you do it well, then you'll create that trust, and people will just open up to you.
I guess there's something in there about being kind of real about it. So one of the things that I kind of struggle with, and I've looked at, I'm not a planner obviously, but I've looked at lots of the stuff that planners read and seen some of the course materials and all that. And some of it seems, I don't know, maybe it's for Americans, it seems very prescriptive. You do step one, then you do step two, and this is how you do it. And I've always kind of struggled with that. But I think what you've done is kind of to what Roland's said in the chat there is, if you're sharp enough on your feet to pivot off that to whatever the client values, find out what that client's valuing and sit there and do what you need to do, then you can do that. How do you, because everyone's skill sets are different, right? And you're obviously fantastic on your feet and really, really good with clients, I have no doubt at all. And paying you compliments pains me beyond belief, right? But I'm fairly sure that's true. Otherwise, you couldn't afford all those nice pillars and stuff.
I know that's
the pillars are going to be a feature. But you've got a great team, but the skill, you know, everybody's got different skill sets. How do you get a team to that position? Because that's quite a tough ask, I think.
It is. So in going through that, this is why we're kind of taking the learning from the Kinder Institute and the process there. We're working very closely with Neil Bage and BIQ. I'm doing I'm doing more learning now than I've done in my career for the last, couldn't tell you. And it's all around behavioural finance. That's kind of it. That's my thing. And so how do you cascade that, I think, is the question. We hired somebody in June because we've got this graduate programme. So the majority of our team, we'll come on to the senior team, I suppose, but the majority of our team, if you like, are products of our graduate programme. So they've come through our training programme, and now during lockdown, what we did was we put them all through a 3-day training course called, it's a firm in Glasgow called Kissing with Confidence, and they have this Rainmaker programme, which is all about relationships, emotional intelligence, and going through some of the sales stuff. Absolutely, let's not get away from it. We are all in sales. That's it. It's just what are you selling? You're not selling products. selling a service, you're selling the client's futures, and going through that, then running weekly workshops with them, and then starting to introduce the themes from the Kinder Institute and Neil Page, etc. Then that's helped them along. But we are, as we start to roll out the new kind of value proposition, there's a whole piece of training to be done around that. But the great thing is our team are young and just voracious learners, and they're adaptable and they're smart. So it's just making sure that you have the right people in the right places, of course. But it's been great. It really has been great. And I see there's a lot of chat around emotional intelligence and EQ and empathy. That, one of probably the biggest challenges in hiring people straight out of university. We understand academically what standard they are at, but they also come with a lot less life and work experience, and therefore less life experience. So one of the things that we are, the big training, as well as obviously going through their CII and CISI exams and getting chartered and all that stuff, was really important. What is equally important as well is that we develop them as people and develop their soft skills, their emotional intelligence and everything else.
And we had a brilliant moment at HomeGame last year. So you were talking about some of the grad stuff on a panel, and the tutor. It was your tutor was in the audience, and that wasn't planned out at all. And it was what kind of transpired. Some of you in the chat were there and will remember. What transpired was this amazing conversation between you, and he could see what you've done, and talking about how can we keep graduates interested in this profession and all that. So presumably you've kept some links with Glasgow Cali, or
we've got
guys.
I think we're the only firm with an established graduate scheme, certainly for that degree course. We took on another graduate in June, and I guess the challenge, because you can see as they move through our kind of 2-year program and into kind of senior, what we call client manager roles, and then ideally some of them become advisors with their own client banks. We've now got 3 of them with client banks that we've again cascaded down from the top, and it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, given obviously the situation. And we would usually be going to the university and doing guest lectures. I would take some of the graduates along. They would speak, tell the undergraduates their experience and answer questions and try and get a bit of interest going. That took a long time. It should be said, and I've written about this. There was a very long tail on that. It probably only now are we really reaping the rewards, and we're 9 years something down the road since I started engaging with the university. Probably longer. And we always see the things about it's a really untrusted kind of occupation, and that it's hard to get grads into it and all that kind of stuff, and people have still got a kind of shiny Swiss Tony kind of view of it. Do you see that? Is that starting to shift? I mean, you're hardly the poster child, right? So turn up with my gold rings and my sheepskin.
That's right.
Yes. Although in that particular part of the business school, there's banking and more kind of investment management-y type stuff going on, and that seems quite shiny and glamorous and all that. I'm not sure why, but you do see that changing, and as we are trying to explain to them that this is a fantastic profession. There's never been a better time to join our profession, and it's only going to get better. There's greater demand and less of us, and we're more professional, and our reputation. Okay, certain firms aside, and obviously FCA issues and blah blah blah. But it is a fantastic career. And incredibly rewarding as well, much more so than perhaps some of those other jobs, which are you're just not working with people and changing people's lives. So, or maybe you are, but probably not for the better.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I found myself talking about the more failed mini bonds and all that kind of stuff at the weekend, and it's no wonder folk get turned off, right? One of the things that I think is interesting about Murphy Wealth is a lot of planning firms I know they're kind of true believers, and that's great. But it's like guns and butter, right, or a seesaw. As a result of them being true believers, everything else becomes not interesting and commoditized and all that kind of stuff. So they would no more spend time on an investment proposition than fly to the moon, because it's wasted when I could be thinking about doing life planning and all that kind of stuff, which I understand that dynamic. But you kind of push on all the levers at the same time. So you are interested in that part of it as well. So tell us a little bit about how that works and how do you find the time, right? Because it's hard to have everything louder than everything else all the time.
Yeah, the thing that I am acutely aware of is what I'm not good at.
I've got a list of things you're not good at, by the way.
There is probably a longer list of the things I'm not good at than I am. But again, quite early on, I decided that I wasn't going to be full-on client advisory. Way back, this is an agreement Dad and I made way back. I would have the opportunity to work on the business and growing the business, and that took a long time. I was fresh out of university, so it took a long time for me to get there. But we now have a kind of real functional structure that you would expect to find in any normal business. I think one of the challenges in financial planning is that the businesses are typically, and there's some great folk in the chat room there, great financial planners, and that's what we do and that's what we're good at. To then be able to do everything else and grow a business of some scale, you just can't, right? You can't. There's no way you can be the financial planner and everything else at the same time. You will fall over developing different new propositions and an investment proposition and training and graduate schemes. Uncle Tom probably. You would just fall over. So over the piece, we now have an executive team. We brought in a fantastic, at the time, operations director from Barclays Wealth, who I believe is listening in. So good job, Fiona. Yeah. Because we're kind of looking at, right, the team is growing. We have all of these graduates in this program, and we're trying to scale up the business. And Neil and I, with the best will in the world, Neil's our director of financial planning, with the best will in the world, we're probably not the people to do that. So we brought Fiona in. Fiona's now our director of people and operations, because actually that's where our real strengths are. And that's just been fantastic. Then we thought, right, we need a finance function and a commercial function. So we brought in John Moran, who came in as his former managing director at Bank of Scotland, joint ventures and various other really senior roles. And for some reason, he thought it would be a good idea to join our firm. He's now stepping up to full-time executive chairman for the next stage of our growth, which is a huge vote of confidence in the firm and what we're doing. And we have an insourced comms director. I can't do all. I've got lots of good ideas. I've got lots of really bad ideas as well. And therefore, hopefully, we implement more of the good ones, and the team are there to make sure that happens, and they say no to the bad ones. That's how it should hopefully work.
I won't invite Fiona on about telling truth to power, but we'll maybe do that another week. People have no problem with it. But there's a kind of serious businessy point inside all that, which is that you're kind of repeatedly investing here, because these folk have no idea what they get paid, but I'm sure they're not cheap. And most advisory firms of whatever kind of specialism struggle to invest. I mean, it's not just advisory firms, actually. We struggle with it. And at my size of firm, we struggle to invest in people who aren't fee earners in their own right. And I struggle to have time. I'm still a fee earner of sorts, and I don't have time to do a lot of stuff you're describing there. How do you square away the kind of drain of that and take that longer term view? Does it concern you as you're going along, or are you just like absolutely nailed on that this is the right thing to do?
I just don't sleep. That's pretty much that's it. I've done it with sleep, and I'm actually only 23, and look at the state of me.
Which means you were 9 when I met you, and that is disturbing, given how much you were on your neck at the time. Yeah.
No, you got the stress of not doing that then would be far greater, and the frustration for me. I'm still young, as much as a joke. I'm still under 40. I'll not say how much. It's not much, and therefore I'm lucky I have time. I'm lucky that I both have time on my side, and I also made sure that I had time to think, and therefore start to imagine and bring in support to help me figure out, right, what is it, and all this stuff, and growing a business. But the cost side of it, you just have to get over it. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, and you have a plan in place and it makes sense, then at some point you have to back yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're not. And don't. It's okay. I mean, everybody's got their own. Everybody on here and in the profession have their own goals, dreams, aspirations with their business, and that's okay. But if you have a strong belief in your ability and what you're doing is right, then at some point you have to back yourself, or just you kind of stop. So I don't have that switch where I kind of go, right, that'll do. I think I'm always pushing to see what's possible. What could we do with this? We think we've got a good message. We think we've got a good brand. We do a great job for our clients. We can always do a better job for our clients. And that's that kind of mindset that keeps pushing us forward. And I dare say, over the next couple of years, there'll be some pretty massive changes to the business. Again, we may do an acquisition. We will certainly grow substantially, and we will need other functions that, as you say, don't generate income directly, that are cost lines rather than income generative. But I'm now very comfortable with that. The first time we did it, and our dad was still involved. Dad stepped away entirely now, and but who's paying for that, right? Where are they generating business from? They don't. It's not the job, but you can't. There is Shirlaw's, in fact, and they spoke at Darren Shirlaw spoke at one of the Nucleus conferences a while ago, and they have a model, and it's very simple. It's kind of brick models and stuff, but there's some statistics around where firms get stuck around kind of turnover and staff numbers and all that. And there's some very common themes there where firms get stuck because they don't make that next investment, and they don't make the investment ahead of when they actually need it. That's the bit you have to get into your head as well, is that you're not investing today and you get the return tomorrow. I can tell you that is just not the case. But then you look at value. What is it? What are you creating here? Are you just creating income, or are you building a really, really valuable business? And if you can get your head around that, it really helps as well.
Brilliant. I've got one more kind of question to ask about that sort of investment stuff, and I know Lee's on the chat. You did a remarkable thing on one of the Octo chats, I think, with a kind of bit of rebranding work. Is that right?
Yes.
Live rebrand.
Live rebrand. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you're positioning yourself, and tell people that weren't at Octo about what happened there, because it was a hell of a thing to do.
It was brilliant. It was Lee. I'd actually asked him. We were like, we believe that the kind of genesis of this was, we think, given the changes that have happened during the last 6 months, that there's no reason why we can't have a UK-wide presence. Because this is how we do business now, and people largely we've taken on a lot of new clients over the last period from all over the place, and thinking, right, okay, so if we're going to do that, we need to spruce things up a bit. Trying to be cheap, and given where we're at in the world right now, right, let's see if we can spruce up the website. And I went to Lee and I said, Lee, you see everybody, you speak to everybody. What give me some examples of some of the websites and some of the kind of stuff that you like, because I'm not sure where we're at with that. And he said, well, actually, funnily enough, I'm just off a call with Mike from Core. And he said he's offered to do, for one of our members, offered to do this kind of wee brand exercise. And that was how it happened. And I took him up on that. Of course I did. The only slight issue was that Mike, when they went away and had a look at our stuff and came back and said, yeah, see, what we were hoping was you'd be really rubbish, and then we could just do a couple of wee tweaks and it'd be like bada bing, bada boom. Your stuff's not bad to start with, so it's a bigger job. We did that exercise, and then we hired Core. That wasn't part of it. There's no obligation or anything, but we loved what they did, and the whole the kind of brand messaging is very much around that idea of being yourself. Everybody is individual, and that's how we would like you to be. Our plan that we develop with you will be for you. So that theme has developed, which has been fantastic. But there is going to be, and you'll see it when it starts to roll out, a slightly, I'm not sure what the right phrase is, slightly irreverent, quite eye-catching, wee bit tongue-in-cheek. Because what we need to do, and this has come out in other calls, and it's really interesting, I think, for everybody. It's such a, David's saying there, it was a great session. I think it was a great session because it's such a powerful topic for everybody. We all struggle with marketing, branding, messaging, whatever your thing is, right? And where you have examples like Vanguard. Now, Vanguard aren't our competition because they don't do what we do, but they're on the telly. They're on the side of buses, and their messaging is really clear, and they have the market penetration and the deep pockets. So how do we counter that? Our messaging has to be much, much clearer. Our branding has to be much, much more, has to stand out. And we have to be able to get across that value proposition. So we've got to be eye-catching. It's got to hit people where it matters. And they've got to be able to understand what the difference is. So that's the journey we're on to try and do that. And we'll be doing kind of testing social media campaigns in various locations around the UK. And just to see, it's going to be a really interesting exercise. The vast majority of our business still comes from referrals from our existing clients. That's it. And long may that continue. That's where the entire 43 years of the business has been built on. But there is something else out there, and we all know everyone on here is a good quality financial planner, but there's lots of people being really badly served. So if we can bring high quality planning to where they are, then that's got to be good.
Nice one. Listen, we're at time, so last thing, I'm going to give you a magic wand, and you can fix one problem in the sector. What is it?
Oh God. I mean, it's so cliched, but this whole, if I can roll, PI, risk, FCA all into one ball, it's such, I mean, you see it on Twitter, everybody's seen on Twitter the increase in people's fees, and, we've got our PI renewal coming in November again. We're like, what's going to happen this time? We've got a good relationship, so it should be okay, but it's broken. I mean, the system is broken. You can't get away from that. The risks that each of our business are subject to, which has nothing to do with us and what we do, it's just crazy. You're talking about mini bonds and all that kind of thing. That I don't know how, but at some point that has to change. We need a better lobby. I still think that we don't have had a powerful enough lobby. It's always shouted down by other vested interests. I know various people over the years have tried to get something going, but I don't know. I'm keen to at least at Scottish government level get involved and see what I can see if we can't start getting a bit of a voice. There's committees that are probably worth getting involved in, advisory groups and stuff. But it's tough. It really is. So that's the thing I would change, and just. Those of us who are doing a great job for our clients and have been for a long time, just let us go on with it.
Yeah. There was one thing I did mean to ask you about, and we are clearly over time, but there's one really important thing we haven't talked about, which is the work with MND.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we should just mention that, and we'll finish off there because I clean forgot because I was listening so intently to what you're saying. So tell us a little about the charitable side.
Yeah, it's a really important. It's interesting. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. That getting involved with a charity, and I had a number of causes that I felt quite strongly about. And then my eldest brother was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, and so it became really obvious what cause it was that I should follow. So I've now joined the board of MND Scotland, and it's been the work they do is just brilliant on the care side, but also we are funding this smart MND research, the drug trial. My brother's actually on that. Unfortunately, it will be too late for him, and that's something that we'll have to come to terms with. But I'm gonna put everything into that because it's a terrible. I don't know if anyone watched the programme last night. It's such an awful disease. So we'll be doing loads and loads of fundraising. We'll be doing profile raising and trying to find out that, as I said to the rest of the board, I've come in to try and make us all redundant. That's got to be the goal. Let's never have a need. Let's not have a need for MND Scotland or MND or charities of any description because we've cured it. So.
Sounds right to me, and a very good place to leave it. Thank you so much for doing all that. Really enjoyed that session. That was great, as I knew it would be. And thanks to everyone on the chat as well for chipping in. Yeah. I'll be back next week. I think Steve will be doing it next week. I'm on holiday unless Nicola Sturgeon says I need to stay in my seat. I'll be in a cottage somewhere in the West Coast with no Wi-Fi, and very much looking forward to that. Darren Cook will be our guest next week, another really good planner, and not a man short of an opinion either. So looking forward to that. In weeks to come, we've also got Catherine Knowles and we've got Gary Hale as well. And hi, Gary. I know you're here today. Thank you to everybody. As ever, a joy to do these, and I hope you enjoyed it. Lancat out.